as we can. It becomes more difficult for us when we receive things late. And I would say that anything, especially after closing hours on the day of the meeting, really has come in too late because we are all at home eating dinners and we are prepping for this meeting at that point. So yeah, I mean, it is, we live in a different time now, Bruce, where personal attendance is different. So we're trying to accommodate as much as we can, but there is a certain cutoff.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm good with a cutoff. That's
All right,
okay.
guys, let's, I'm going to call the Topsom Planning Board to order. Patty, can you please take the roll?
Karen, Don Stan,
Present?
Ronald Bisson,
Present.
Larry Brand,
Present.
Scott Libby,
Present.
Joshua Spooner,
Here.
Tom Thompson. Tom Thompson.
He's here.
Tom Thompson. He's on. There he is. Bruce Benoit
Present.
and Rod Melanson and Andrew DC. I've heard them and I know they're present also. So everybody's here.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Just a note before I go to the minutes, we had 4 public hearings. The 4th public hearing is going to be at the next, I believe, the next planning board. There are 2 public hearings that I will be doing. The Aroma Joe's public hearing, I am recused, and so Tom will be leading that effort. So Rod, do you want to give us a quick rundown? Oh, let's do the minutes first. I'm sorry. Do we have a motion in regards to the minutes, or are there any comments in regards to the minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes of September 1, 2020 as written.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Do we have any discussion? All right. Hearing none or seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Is there anybody that is either abstaining or opposing? All right, seeing none, we're good. All right, so now Rod.
Thanks, Don. So this is for the board and for the public in attendance. I'll give a quick intro on the procedures of the meeting, and the board will begin the meeting with the agenda items. If you are interested in speaking to the board, please wait until the chairman opens the public comments session. When the public session is open, please raise your hand via the chat function. The meeting facilitator will promote you to a panelist so that you can turn on your camera and microphone. Please provide your name and address for the record. After you are done speaking, you will be shifted back to a meeting attendee. There are approximately 25 registered attendees for this meeting tonight. Since we have a large number of interested members of the public, please keep your comments to less than 3 minutes and limited to the topic at hand. The meeting is intended to end by 9 p.m. If necessary, the board will consider extending the meeting beyond 9 p.m. by a vote. All meeting materials for this session and every session of the planning board are available at topsom.com/nextmeeting. And that's the intro, Don.
All right, thank you very much. Why don't we move into the first public hearing? It's Augusta Road LLC, care of Sunrays Investments, 449 Augusta Road, R10-085. Site plan approval for solar energy conversion systems facility. So I guess who do we have that's going to present that?
I can do a quick intro, Don, and then we have Kara Moody from Stantec representing the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
This is the first site plan that you all will review under our new solar energy conversion systems ordinance. If you recall, this is the ordinance that was recently passed at town meeting to facilitate principal use solar facilities. The application does require a site plan approval, and it must meet the performance standards of both the site plan and the zoning ordinance, as well as the specific performance standards within that solar energy conversion systems ordinance section that we worked on over the course of the last year. Kara is here to kind of present the project and outline their proposal, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, before we move, can you also just very briefly talk about the performance guarantee, because you called out in both memos?
Yes, so one of the components of the submission process and approval process for the solar energy conversion systems use is that a estimate needs to be provided by the applicant for the costs of the decommissioning of the facility. So at the end of its useful life, we want to make sure that these facilities are removed and removed in a responsible way. So the applicant has provided a cost estimate. We have not affirmed that at this point in time. What we would prefer to do is, if this is approved this evening, that subsequent to that approval, we would engage a third-party engineer or reviewer to affirm that price, and also perhaps engage our legal representatives to help us with the surety guarantee. I would suggest that if you're inclined to approve it, that just be a component of the approval.
Okay, thank you. So Kara, would you like to present the project?
Yes, thanks. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kara Moody. I work for Stantec Consulting Services. We're an environmental and engineering firm, and we're representing the applicant, Augusta Road Topsom Solar, who's a subsidiary of Sunrays Investments. The applicant is proposing to construct a 6 megawatt solar facility on Augusta Road. That's a 6 megawatts direct current, and the total project area is about 19 acres, 19.8 acres. That will consist of solar arrays, access road, inverters, and a perimeter fence around the arrays. And total fenced area for the project is approximately 18 acres. Currently, much of the land that the project is sited on is open. It's kind of a shrubby area. There will be some limited tree clearing involved in the project. Project has been designed to avoid and minimize impacts to natural resources to the extent possible. As such, we are not having any direct wetland impacts. There will be impacts as a result of clearing vegetation in wetlands. That's needed to construct the arrays, and also to prevent vegetation from shading the panels. So to address those indirect impacts to wetlands, we filed a Natural Resources Protection Act permit with the DEP. There is a small amount of direct impact just from installing the ground screws that support the racking, again, covered in the NERPA permit submitted to the DEP. There's a wetland and wetland swale that we're crossing. That's been designed to be bridged so that we won't have any direct impacts to wetlands at that crossing. So I think that covers the natural resource impacts proposed. Construction for the project is anticipated to begin in March of next year. Pretty short construction process, of only about 6 months, and then it should be up and running. I think that, that's a high level overview. I'm happy to share my screen if anyone wants to look at plans, has particular questions. We submitted our application in July and received our preliminary comments in August, and had a call with the fire chief to address some comments from the peer reviewer and concerns from the fire chief, and believe we have satisfied those concerns in this revised package that we put together for September 4th.
Okay. I think I'll go around the board. There was one or two public questions. One in regards to noise had you already addressed that? And with the planning staff or?
So I did see the comment that came in about noise. The application package includes a noise or sound assessment essentially. So the portions of the project that will produce noise are the inverters and transformers. They're very quiet essentially. The noise study shows that you know, you won't be able to hear the project at the lot lines. So it's really, if you're standing like right next to an inverter, that you'd be able to hear it. But otherwise, no noise concerns. Again, there's more detail in the noise assessment that was provided.
Okay, all right. Let's go around and see if we've got questions from the board. And I'm going to go based on my screen. Ron, do you have any questions?
No, I'm all set right now.
All right,
I
thank
think
you.
looks pretty good.
Larry?
There's quite a package here, so I just wanted to see if I was seeing the noise assessment. Is that the one from Reuter Associates?
Yep, attachment N. It is a large package of information there.
Yeah.
And then there is a section of the application narrative that also talks about, basically summarizes that noise assessment. Just like a paragraph in the application narrative.
Okay. Now, the attachment N, though, does not address the level of noise at the lot lines, does it? Or did I miss something?
Let me pull it up for you real quick.
Well, I have it open.
Yeah. So, well, if you look at the figure that is in attachment N, so there's a drawing that's provided that shows essentially, where 40 decibel dBA, 45 dBA, I think, and then 50 dBA, if I'm remembering correctly. So shows where those noises would be heard, how far from the inverters. The figure that's provided in attachment N isn't representative of the final layout, but it makes the point that you really can't hear these things once you get very far away from the inverters.
Okay, so that's what I didn't quite understand was that a figure that's in there to drop down the noise level to the property line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is there going to be any other use on the property, or is the solar array it?
Well, so the applicant is, I believe, leasing a portion of the property. So that portion that they're leasing, there will be no other use. As for the remainder of the property, I'm not entirely sure. And I don't think Pat has joined us. Pat Jackson is the developer, and he could probably answer that for you, but it doesn't look like he's on the call yet. So
I see.
Okay.
Pat.
I'm on if anybody can hear me.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry
ahead,
to join late. Hi,
Pat,
everybody.
identify yourself, please.
Hi, Pat Jackson with Sunrays as the applicant. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
Thanks. So there are no other uses on the property that I'm aware of after the solar goes in.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have right now, Don.
Thank you, Larry. Tom, do you have questions? I think you're mute. I can't hear you, Tom.
Yeah, I have two, maybe three. First of all, should we be adding as a condition of approval, this probably goes back to staff, what I've got written down is prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit and use permit, the applicant shall provide evidence that the installed components meet the standards of 225-37 Such evidence shall be conducted and/or affirmed by a licensed professional by means of acoustical testing at the property line. Since we were talking about noise,
Tom, I can speak to that a little bit. I think you're actually referencing a condition that I proposed for the Middlesex Road project. I would say that in a couple of ways, this project is slightly different than that project when it comes to noise. At the Middlesex Road project, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when their project comes up, their formula-based analysis of noise indicates that noise at the property line will be just a few decibels lower than the threshold in the evening in the residential area. This one has a greater spread between what the anticipated noise is at the property line and that threshold. So I'm less anxious with this proposal about affirming that there's going to be no noise impact. Certainly it's the board's pleasure. And if you feel that that's something that's applicable to this project, that would be the condition that you would place on the project.
thank you. Just two more questions, Don. One of the inquiries from one of the listeners wants to know how long construction period will take.
Should take about 6 months.
About how long?
About 6 months.
About 6 months. Okay, thank you. And then the last thing is, there's a trigger review for the surety somewhere along the line down the road. Who's responsible for managing that process?
I didn't totally hear your question.
Regarding the surety down the road, there's a trigger review, bond.
I can speak to that, Tom. Yes, there is I believe a 5-year cyclical review and an adjustment of the bond. So every 5 years during its operation, they must submit a revised estimate, and we need to reapprove it and make sure that that surety is in place.
So do they monitor the process or do you monitor?
It is their legal responsibility to submit it to us. If they don't, then they would be in violation, and we could potentially, shut down the site or cause them to submit that estimate.
Thank you.
That it, Tommy?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Scott?
Yeah, I had a couple, actually. I was able to answer one of mine while we were looking at the plans here. That was about the mitigation fee. I did notice, you've got it in there as the calculation and show some of the medium and low rated areas on your plans. So thank you for putting that in there. So I don't have to ask that question. I did have a question following up on the ones that Tom Saucier had put forth about the stormwater and non-stormwater. Seemed like the last question or two questions that he had left unresolved. Could you provide some information on that? And
We're still working with Tom to get those couple of things addressed. We've been kind of emailing back and forth with him earlier this week, trying to make sure we understand exactly what it is he's looking for. I think that probably we'll try to set up a quick call with him in the next couple days, just to make sure that we're providing, the right info that he's requesting.
okay, thanks. And obviously, it's something that we've got down as a condition, and they didn't seem very major to begin with. So,
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Is that it, Scott?
Yeah, that's about it. So
Okay.
one question I have for us, one of the conditions that we always have is the no occupancy. I assume that means in general terms, use or whatnot, or do we change it to no use? I mean, obviously there's not gonna be much occupancy.
I coordinated with Tom Lister, who's our code enforcement officer and the person who issues an occupancy permit. From his perspective, in the absence of a structure that needs to be occupied, he would be issuing
a use permit, an affirmation that they meet the site plan requirements, they've got all the necessary things in order, and that they can operate. Certainly, if you want to be more specific in the condition, include use permit. I think I did in maybe a couple of those conditions, but maybe I wasn't very consistent. Regardless, either way, Tom Lister's perfectly fine with kind of using that as the trigger.
Right. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Scott. Bruce?
No questions.
All right, Josh? I didn't understand you, Josh.
Yeah, that was not me. So the mitigation, the only question I have relates to the same question Scott raised, which is the mitigation fee. Unlike Scott, I was unable to find it, and I was wondering whether or not, or how it's picked up in the conditions of approval. In other words, what are we listing the amount and requiring it's paid, or how is that handled? Are we just generally referencing the code and saying comply with the code? How are we specifically dealing with the precise amount of mitigation fee that we're requiring the applicant to pay to do the project?
Yeah, so the applicant has provided, and we are affirming that they are proposing the right mitigation fee. In order for them to get signed plans, they will need to pay that fee. Certainly, it could be added as a specific condition. Since it is a requirement, and I believe that it's required that it is to be paid before in the ordinance, that trigger, I don't think it needs to be conditioned, but we can certainly add one if that would make the board more comfortable.
I actually think we should. Okay, I think I've asked the board, are there any more questions from the board or any more comments from the applicant before I open up the public hearing? All right, hearing or seeing none. Why don't we open up the public hearing? And Andrew, are you controlling this?
I am, yes. So if you're in the public and interested in speaking or asking a question, just raise your hand. If you go into kind of a chat function, there's a button that says to raise your hand, and that will show me that you're interested, and I can then allow you to speak. I do have one. This is Ashley Dixon.
Hello,
Ashley, you with us?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please state your address, Ashley.
471 Augusta Road.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
My question is in regards to how close to the property line will the solar equipment and et cetera be placed?
I think you're muted.
Thanks. I don't have that number right offhand. If I can pull up the plans and take a peek, but we followed, all the town setback requirements from the lot line, which I believe are 50 feet for this zone. If I just pull up the plan quickly. Yeah, 50 foot setbacks. In some areas, it will be more than that, but at minimum 50 feet.
Thank you.
Okay, did you have any other questions, Ashley?
No, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, any other folks with comments or questions?
I don't see any other raised hands. Oh, we've got one. Hang on. This is Ed Karen.
Ed, please go ahead and speak.
Yes, I just wanted to, I'll speak in favor of the
Ed,
plan.
give us your address as well, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ed Karen, 56 Karen's Corner Road. I'm an abutting neighbor. I've seen the plans. I've spoke with maybe Kara or someone else about my concerns with the water, and I'm very happy with my answers. And the only thing I would suggest is you start cutting it while it's dry, because March is going to be awful wet out there. So, but I'm in favor of it, and I think it's a good project for that piece of property.
Okay,
That's
thank you. All right, Andrew, back to you.
Any other raised hands? I'm not seeing any right now. I don't think we have any more, Don.
Okay, thank you. All right, I am going to close the public hearing and come back to the board. Are there any further questions from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Seeing none. Tommy, do you want to?
Should just leave it on.
I
I just want to ask a question. Are we going to add mitigation fee must be paid or operation begins as a number 13 condition?
Yes, I believe we should.
I believe we should, yes.
Okay. All right. We ready for the motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. I move that the site plan application for Augusta Road Topsom LLC, Sunrays Investments, tax map R10, lot 85, is in compliance with the standards in 175, 225, and 225, 60.19 solar energy conversion systems based on the following. Number one, board review, site plan and general performance standards addressed on pages 24 through 37. Topsom Solar's site plan review application dated 9/4/2020. Number two, board review of the applicant's comment letter dated 9/4/2020. Number three, board review of the memo from the planning staff dated 9/11/2020, stating that the project has been evaluated by town staff and the town's consulting engineer, indicating the performance standards will be met with the 12 conditions approved with the 12 conditions approval listed on pages 2 and 3 of that same memo. And number four, after further project review tonight, the board has also added the following condition, which is number 13, that the mitigation fee must be paid before operation begins.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I think Ron got in there just ahead of you, Scott. So Ron seconds. Any discussion by the board? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there any opposition? Okay, seeing none, it's unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Kara.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so moving on to item 2 on the agenda. Middlesex Turnpike Solar One LLC, care of Origo Solar Systems, 357 Middlesex Road, R08047, C site plan approval for solar energy conversion systems facility. And who will be presenting that?
Don, we have Dave Albrecht representing the applicant today, and he's with us.
Okay, and the only other thing I'd ask, maybe before Dave starts, Andrew, there was, Tom had mentioned that there were waivers included here. Can you just update the board on that?
Eagle Eye, Tom Thompson, our vice chair, accurately identified that a couple of the waivers that were requested by the applicant, and there were 4 in total, 2 of them had the wrong references. Instead of being section 5 of 175, it really needed to be section 10. I brought that up with the applicant earlier today, and if this is approved this evening, I believe the applicant would be happy to revise those materials to correctly reference the correct sections. All the waivers are supported by staff.
Okay, thank you. All right, Dave, would you like to introduce yourself and state your address, please?
Yes, this is David Albrecht. I'm a professional engineer with Borrego Solar Systems. We're located at 55 Technology Drive in Lowell, Massachusetts. I'm currently not there. I'm at my home in Vermont. Also on tonight is Ryan Bailey. He is our project developer, also with Borrego. So he was hoping that he could just kind of give a brief overview to the board, if that's possible.
Please do. Ryan, also then introduce yourself.
Hi, yes, this is Ryan Bailey. Can the board hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, so like Dave said, I'm a project developer with Borrego Solar. I'm located in southern Maine. So yeah, appreciate you guys hearing our application. So yeah, just a quick intro on the project. So we're requesting approval for our site plan application for roughly 5.9 megawatt direct current solar project at 335 Middlesex Road. The site is currently a disc golf course owned by Kurt Weaver, and now owned by Sunrise Ridge LLC. We're leasing the land from Sunrise Ridge LLC. What we're proposing is a 16-acre project within the fence line. The project itself will be participating in kind of solar programs created by the state of Maine. I believe we gave you guys some background on it, and you're probably pretty well versed on. The power from the project will be delivered to the grid, but we'll be selling credits from the project to Maine Health's hospital system across the state. So that's kind of where the electricity is going. And I think I'll kick it to Dave. He can give you some more details on the project site.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. So I'm going to share my screen as I just hit the little green button, Andrew.
You got it. Go for it.
Okay. Can everyone see the screen?
My screen, I see you're bringing something up, but it's black right now. There you go.
So you see a lot of green and some red?
Yes, sir. I see green and red.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks so much, Chairman. So I'm going to present to you sort of the existing conditions of the site, and then I'll talk about the proposed project. Certainly ask any questions at any time. No issues there. So before you now is the existing conditions plan. We've had the site surveyed by CES out of Brewer, Maine. They also completed a wetland delineation, which you see in the green. The red is the property line. The property line does run along the creek here, but it's very windy, so I didn't show those particular lines in red. Access to the site currently is off of Middlesex Road over here to the west. North is straight up on these plans. We currently have sort of two access points. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And this access point and this parking area here are associated with the Cripps Disc Golf Course. This little building right here is the only structure on the site, and that's associated with the disc golf course. There is a power line easement that runs through here that actually goes to the Weaver's home, and that easement we've basically worked around that particular easement and that overhead power line. Along with the wetlands that were delineated, there was a number of potential vernal pools located on the site. These were located during a time of year where they were considered potential because it wasn't the time of year to be doing a vernal pool assessment. Since that time, back in June of this year, May, June, we did have CES go back out and determine that these two areas here in yellow, there's one here, and there's a little small one right here. We were vernal pools and met the criteria, and the state has agreed with them. So we've got a 250-foot buffer zone associated with each one of those. And I'll, when I get to in a few minutes, talk about the project itself. We can show how we've minimized impact to both wetlands and the vernal pool 250-foot buffer zone. as you can imagine, much of the site drains towards the southeast, towards the brook. And there's up here at the top of the hill, this area here, it's sort of a lot flatter, and so wetlands have formed over the years. So let me go to the next plan. So this plan is the proposed plan, and same scale, same orientation. And how I'll start is with the fact that we've met all the setback requirements for the project. It's a 16 acres inside the fence, and there are basically two sets of fences. There's a southern array, and then there's a northern array, and they're completely separate because we have this power line easement that sort of bifurcates the site. So those are completely separate from a fencing perspective, although we have access gates to go to each one of them. Access is going to be from this location down here, this where we have access to the parking area, and then we'll come in and you can see this gray line is our gravel access road. The utility company requires access to their poles, which are in this location. A couple of these poles are theirs, the remainder are ours, our Borrego's, and they require access to those poles at all times. So that's why there are two access points, and we do have DOT permits for both of those. It might not be readily apparent, but we have eliminated any wetland impact to the from the project. We've kept away from the wetlands across the front here. We've gone through, we've used an existing roadway, gravel road between these two particular wetlands. We have minimized impact to the 250-foot buffer zone to this particular vernal pool, and then this one to the far west. And we have filed a NERPA permit by rule and have received approval of that for that particular work, which really is some tree clearing and obviously some fence and some racking construction, which are augured screws into the ground. So the system itself, it's a ground-mounted fixed tilt solar energy generating system. The fencing around is both arrays, the north and the south, are 7 feet high. They're raised up off the ground by 6 inches to allow small mammals to pass through. That's our standard at Borrego. The system itself, the blue you see, those are the all the different racks, and each rack has 24 modules on it, and each rack is founded in the ground with 6.5 foot long augured screws. So basically we come through and just drill screws into the ground. There's no concrete foundations or any over excavating to install those. And there's no grading associated with the racking themselves. That once the tree clearing of about 10 acres is completed and the stumps are removed and just the area smoothed out, the remainder of the vegetation that exists will just be cut down to 4 to 6 inches, and we'll reseed everything prior to the racking going in, and then reseed post-construction as needed to make sure we have a fully stabilized site. All of the conduit and cable inside the fences is underground. Half the system goes to one of these orange equipment areas, and the other half goes to this one. Although in our application we noted a energy storage system, batteries, we are not proposing with the final plan any energy storage. So that when we talk a little bit about noise, I'll bring up that particular document that was in our application. So the roadway is a gravel roadway. It's been widened in specific areas to 20 feet wide. Our hammerheads or our turnaround areas meet state fire code. We have turnaround at this location. We have a turnaround here. We have a turnaround at the very, very end of the project right here. And then we have obviously the roadway going out to Middlesex Road. Other than these particular items, we have a couple of culverts that are associated with the project. And we've shared all that information with the town and with Tom Saucier. And we are in the midst of that review. We've responded to the first round of comments, and I think the rest of the comments will be handled post, as part of conditions of any approval, if we're so lucky to gain it, that we can, we'll take care of those post haste and make sure that the town is happy with everything and get the plan signed. So we've gone through all of our due diligence on this particular site with Maine Historic Preservation Commission, with Maine Natural Areas Program, and then with Maine Inland Fisheries and Wildlife with regards to the vernal pool assessment. So those are all either permitted or they were clear by the departments. And I think that's pretty much it. As far as presenting the project, I think there was.
Can you
I wanna
discuss
just
the
talk real
waiver?
quickly? We are less than 20 acres, so this is does not trigger site law with DEP, and we do not trigger a mitigation fee on this particular project. We are outside of any of the triggers in the area. We have had some difficulty adequately showing that to town staff, and I think that will be something we need to work on. The information that's available through the town we were not able to translate that into our plans. But I think that's something that between Andrew and I will figure that out and show the town that there's no need for a mitigation fee. Last but not least, the decommissioning estimate. We have submitted a decommissioning estimate for the project of about $111,000. That is a present value. And what I understand is that that's probably a separate conversation with the town as far as confirming that amount, and then also the method for bonding that into the future. That's pretty much it, Chairman.
Okay, I guess a few things. One is, and maybe I'll ask this of Andrew, the mitigation fee comment. Not that I'm asking you to agree or disagree right now, but it sounds like we need to at least have some coverage in the conditions for that.
They have submitted a diagram that overlays the map that I was able to provide to them over this project. I'm pretty comfortable with the fact that they do not need to provide a mitigation fee. Certainly, if the board would like to have a stronger validation of that, we can work to get some actual GIS data on the plan to make sure that those yellow lines don't touch the project. Either way is perfectly fine. If you do want to do that, it would be an additional condition that would be added to the approval.
Okay, so that's a question. The decommissioning is basically the specific condition item number 12, and that's consistent with what we talked about earlier.
Accurate.
Okay, good. All right, and maybe I missed it, but have we specified exactly what the 4 waivers are? And that may be for Dave rather than you, Andrew, but can someone spell them out?
I've got them if you want them.
I know, I'd kind of like the applicant to tell us what the waivers are they're requesting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, let me bring those up from our application.
Tommy, I knew you did. You found them.
Give me a second. Well, we know the 2 of them have to be changed. Okay, here they are. So the first one, I won't mention the particular section unless you want me to. I can just talk about generally what it is. It's a section 175, utility locations. We're requesting a waiver from showing existing water, sewer within 200 feet of the proposed development site. We've shown the overhead power line to the owner's residence to the east and the easement that's relevant to that, but there are no other utilities on
Okay.
site. No, the next second one talks about buffering, and I did neglect to talk a little bit about this, so I will go back and show that on the plan. Requesting a waiver from the requirement for buffering against residential properties, including landscaping and street trees. And basically, we have a significant amount of vegetation and topography around the perimeter of the project, so we haven't shown any additional screening. So if I might, Chairman, I'd like to let's go back to the plan.
Sure.
So in this, I'll call it the most westerly corner of the project. This is not the closest place the project comes to an adjoining property line. In this particular instance, the racking is 120 some odd feet away from this particular corner. Topography in this area plus this vegetation act as a very good buffer. We have added to that. You might, if you can see this blue line that's outside the red line.
Are you sharing? Because I don't see it.
Can you share your screen again, Dave?
Oh, I'm not still sharing it?
No.
Oh, I apologize. You see it again?
It's coming up. Give it a sec. There you go.
I wonder
You
where
got
it went. I guess when I went to something else, so this particular corner, there's a home over here on the Parks property, and we're 120 some odd feet away with the racking from the corner, the closest corner. So what we've done is we've added this particular section of fence along this lines here is a 7-foot high opaque type fence. Likely it'll be the chain link fence with a natural colored slat in it to help screen the area. The project itself drops in elevation from the fence towards the east, and the racking is typically between 8.5 and 9.5 feet high at its high point, and this fence will be opaque. So that was part of the response for this was we didn't need any additional screening as far as vegetation was concerned. The next waiver request was survey. We're a waiver from the requirement of survey within 200 feet of the site. We have, when you talk about survey, we have located, any adjacent property lines clearly as part of our Alta land title survey. We did that, and this topography that goes beyond our property line is based on LiDAR and melded into the ground topo that was picked up on the ground. Then the last one is the landscape plan, requesting a waiver from the requirement of a landscape plan because we're not proposing any additional trees around the site due to the presence of existing vegetation and topography.
All right. Thank you,
So
Dave.
we will update this, Chairman, to match the Eagle Eye Planning Board member and his comments. Thank you. We'll clean that up as part of our conditions.
Okay, thanks. And if you can unshare, and I'm going to go around the board. Ron, do you have any questions for the applicant? You're muted. There you go.
The only thing I was wondering is how much vegetation between Middlesex Road and the solar panels.
Well, I can
get that.
I can tell you that the closest the project comes to the, I'll just use the center of the road of Middlesex, is 550 feet. And it's not a continuous forest. There's obviously the parking area for the Cripps Golf Course. There is, but we are as far in to this project, into the site, as the Cripps Golf Course is. The Cripps Golf Course is no closer, and we're no closer than that. So
Okay.
there's 300 to 400 feet of trees that will remain.
Okay.
Thanks, Ron. Larry?
So I take it the Cripps Golf Course is going away. Is that my understanding, or am I wrong?
That's correct.
And when you were showing your plan, you had a couple of those little orange building types, which was on the southerly part of the plan, I think it is. And the separation by the right of way. You don't have an orange building on that part, on the other part. I take it that what's generated in the other part is just going to be underground wiring to get to the orange buildings, or?
Correct. That's exactly correct. I should clarify that those are not buildings. I should have gone into a little bit more detail about what they are. Those are our electrical equipment pads, where we'll have a transformer, we'll have our central inverter, we'll have a data acquisition system, a weather station, and other miscellaneous small electrical or communication equipment. And each of those locations is almost exactly the same. It may be oriented a little bit differently on in the orange box, but those are just there's concrete pads in each one of those, and equipment that might be as high as 9 to 10 feet.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't really mean to imply there was a building. I just
Okay.
that type of shape. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Thank you,
I have no
Larry.
other questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
I'm all set.
Okay, Scott?
Yeah, again, I think, thanks for answering a couple of my questions. One of them was about those 2 significant vernal pools. Sounds like you've taken the steps to take care of that. We did bring up that question about whether or not we want to put that mitigation discussion as a condition or not. I assume that the question has to do with the area around the brook, that I don't know if it's officially the Muddy River Brook or not, but it is the headwaters going down into the Muddy River, and it's a wild brook trout stream brook. I mean, I think it's certainly worth discussing it with town staff to get the GIS layers set up and in tune, but it's probably worth putting in as a requirement for us to, at least I think so. I did have a question, and now I've got the printed out page, but I don't know where it is in your packet. I couldn't.
So Scott, hang on. So Tommy, we'll need to pull that into the conditions.
You want to give me the wording, Scott, that you want to use?
Just that the applicant will finalize the status of the habitat mitigation fee in consultation with the town planning staff prior to issuance of use permit.
If any.
If any.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
The other comment, and it's under the submission requirements that you put in, you talk about the scope of regular operations and maintenance of the facility as a contract. Do you remember where that is, David? I can follow up after public comment, but it sounds like you request that this be a condition of approval.
The operations and maintenance?
It's right there. Yeah, it says, and this is more of a question. It says, we request a conditional approval include proof of this O&M contract prior to the project being completed.
Scott, I believe that is the first round of comments from our initial review. And since then, they have provided a redacted and somewhat modified plan, but one that does meet the standards of submission for the project.
Okay, so this was our comments, not something they were stating. Okay.
Accurate, correct.
All right, I take that back then. And then the only other question I had was, we talked about for the waivers, the fact that there is a lot of woods between Middlesex and this project. Do we need to have a condition about retaining the existing vegetation and cover, either as part of the waivers themselves or as a condition of approval? That's more of a question for the board.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. How about the rest of the board? Any comment?
Agreed.
Agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Scott. Then we'll move on to Bruce.
Yeah, I don't really have a substantive questions about the development. I'm interested in some definitional and procedural stuff about the waivers, I guess, in this. I don't know if for the applicant and or staff, but two of them I understand about the landscaping. We just talked about that, and especially with Scott's addition about not cutting the trees between the road, I'm okay with. The other two, you're looking for a waiver from showing other utilities, but you said there weren't any. And then is that just something you do as a matter of course as an applicant, always get waivers for this? Because it actually looks to me like you've satisfied the two survey related things and waivers aren't required. It doesn't say, and I believe in our code, that you can't use LiDAR for abutting, topo and all that kind of stuff. So I guess this is a question for staff. Do we need a waiver for the survey related? There's 4 of them there. 2 are landscape related and buffering related, and 2 are survey plan related. Haven't they met the requirements of our code with what they've submitted?
Yeah,
And if so, we don't need a waiver, correct?
That's a good point, Bruce. I would say if a surveyor or an engineer is willing to seal that statement and say, yep, there are no utilities here, then I think they satisfy that requirement for submission. Yeah. And they would not need.
We've had an engineer say it, but I'm just wondering, is this just a matter of course in your company that you ask for waivers from these things as a liability question? Or-
No, not at all. It's we work in quite a few towns in New England and around the country, and sometimes these are considered a waiver, and then they're worded almost exactly the same as in your ordinance. And sometimes, probably more often than not, boards think the same way the way you're thinking. That yeah, we've met the requirement, but very few towns will say, well, no, we want you to get it. We want you to request a waiver so we can act on it. So that's entirely up to the board. I'm more than happy to delete those and update the other ones as needed. But I think those are the 2 that were probably the ones that I labeled wrong. Instead of 10, they should be 5 or whatever. But that's I'll leave that up to the board. It doesn't matter either way. It's certainly not a liability thing for us.
Okay, and I generally don't like waiving requirements to show certain things and that kind of stuff, just as, what's the rationale for it? If they're not necessary, and I based on my understanding, and I open to staff or, other board thoughts, but I think they've actually met the requirement. I'm looking at this thing and I'm looking around and I think it meets. I don't think we have to waive it, and if we don't, I don't think we should.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
agree.
my position.
I think we have 2 waivers instead of 4.
That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
That's all I had, Don.
Thank you, Bruce. Josh.
That's supported by staff, Bruce.
All right. Thank you, Rod. Josh?
I don't have any comments. I would agree that 2 waivers instead of 4 makes sense to me.
All right. Thanks for pointing that out, Bruce. I'm going to go to the public, and Andrew, you're running this.
Yep, I've got a raised hand, or I did. Let's see here. Oh, there she is. This is Raya.
Hi, Raya Suomala, 605 Middlesex Road. I'm quite a bit down the road. I'm not in a butter. I don't have a personal interest. I do have a question though, in attending this meeting, listening to this site with a significant amount of vegetation around the site being a good thing. But what are the implications for maintenance at the facility as far as herbicide application to keep things at bay? So one question for David, I suppose, if you could consider, or if the planning board has looked at that in that sand silt soil type and headwaters in the Muddy River. What is a long-term herbicide application to keep a solar array from growing up back into the main forest, particularly with a significant amount of Asiatic bittersweet that's in some of the abutting landowner properties. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. David, you want to address that?
Certainly. We would, I don't know if I don't recall one of the conditions, Andrew, but we are very supportive of not using fertilizer, herbicide, pesticide, insecticide, whatever. We just don't use those in the maintenance of our projects. And we have under maintenance probably very close to a gigawatt of projects around the country. And that's something that we support, the non-use of all of those. We'll maintain this particular project. Maintenance would be mowing twice a year, and anything beyond that, if we were to see some woody vegetation growing up inside the fenced area, we would just cut that to the ground. But we don't wait 10 years to do that, where it's something a lot larger. We do it probably every 2 to 3 years if we see it coming up. So.
While it's great that Borrego subscribes to those policies, it doesn't matter because application of pesticides and herbicides is prohibited on these uses.
Right.
So, yeah, across the board, all these facilities will not use pesticides or herbicides.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Andrew, anybody else?
Yep. Greg Emerson.
Greg, please identify yourself and your address, please.
Greg Emerson, 346 Middlesex Road, Topsom, Maine. We are the house across from this project. You had mentioned, David, that you were going to talk about the noise, but I didn't hear you get back to that. So we're curious about the inverter noise or any other noises. Thank you.
Certainly. If I might, Chairman, I'm going to just bring up. I don't need to show it. I'll just talk.
Noise from the highway.
Talk to it. So under the section 225.37 in the ordinance, the maximum allowable exterior noise levels at any point on the property line are regulated by the town for in this particular zoning district for 55 decibels during the day and 45 decibels at night. So if you recall the plan that I presented, the orange areas are where there's a central inverter in each location, and that's where the noise is generated. The noise generated from those 1 meter away is 70 decibels. And the closest property line, which is Jessica Park in the southwest corner where we're adding the opaque fence, that is about 320 feet. And using the inverse square law for how sound travels, basically that noise level of 70 decibels reduces to just a little over 30 decibels. And that's significantly less than either of the two, the daytime 55 decibels or 45 in the evening. That's significantly less than that. I did neglect to talk about this, and I apologize. At the very last sentence of our noise analysis refers to energy storage units. And at one point in time, we were proposing that on this particular site. But right now, the incentives in the state are not generally very good, if at all even exist, for energy storage. So when we resubmit this package, I don't know if we'll need to, Andrew, we can strike that particular sentence out of the application, so there's no confusion. But that, even with that and those distances, we were lower than the regulations at the property line.
Okay, thank you, David. Gregor, did you have another question? Okay. Anyone else, Andrew?
Yes, we have Ernest Bergeron II.
Ernest, if you can hear me, state your name and address, please.
Ernie Bergeron, 41 Murder Road. Our question is there going to be a buffer between our property and the fence line? I think it's on the northern side of the project.
Is there going to be what between you and the
He said a buffer.
Is there a buffer? Well, we've our system. I'm just looking at the plan right now. The distance, the closest the racking gets to any point of the common property line between the Weavers or Sunrise Ridge is 58 feet, which exceeds the setback requirements. And there is an existing tree buffer on the subject parcel, and very little of that will be cut. I mean, we're leaving the trees between the fence line and the existing tree line to the north. Obviously, the trees that are inside the fence are going to be removed.
All right, thanks, David. Ernest, do you have anything else?
No, that's all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Back to you, Andrew.
I don't see any other hands, Don.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm going to declare the public hearing over or closed. So I'll come back to the board. I think two things. One is the normal motion, and I think we're talking 2 waivers instead of 4 waivers. But I'll ask the board if there are any other comments or questions before we entertain a motion.
Don, this is Bruce.
Go ahead.
Just about that noise, I always find it helpful. Decibels themselves don't ring home to me, but when I compare them, that a normal conversation is 60 decibels and 30 decibels is a soft whisper, it gives me more comfort than just the raw numbers. So I'm ready to proceed.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I have two questions,
to you,
Don.
Tommy. Okay, go ahead.
Which 2 waivers are we eliminating?
The 2 survey related ones, the 2 buffer ones or landscape ones stay.
So number 3.
I don't have the numbers in front of me. Can you help us out here, Rod?
Number 2. The number 1 is showing existing water and sewer lines.
That's eliminated.
Gone.
Okay. So it's 1 and 3 that are eliminated. All right.
It's the both that are associated with 17510 will remain.
17510 is buffering. Is that correct?
Correct. Those are remaining waivers.
Right. And then number 4, which is requirement for landscape plan.
That would remain as well. Yep.
Okay, so it's 1 and 3. All right. And the other thing is, there was an additional condition that somebody wanted to add after the mitigation fee.
It was Scott's comment about the
Andrew,
buffering
Andrew
or-
put that in the chat. If you click on the chat function, the wording is right there, Tom.
You guys are getting pretty good at this.
Pretty
Okay,
impressive.
so that'll be number 15.
Okay,
Oh, no, that's number 14. I've got, the applicant will finalize the status of the habitat mitigation fee in consultation. But that's, yeah, that was number, to me, that was number 14. I thought there was another one after that.
Yeah, we
Tom-
talked about retaining the natural vegetative buffer.
yes, and that's correct. So you have, I think you have 14 and 15. So 14 is the one you just said. 15 is what Scott was just referring to. The natural
that was-
buffer.
About what?
Well, more specifically, I believe that was the buffer between Middlesex Road and the facility.
It was.
We want to make any sure that we're maintaining the buffer between the property line and the next property over off of Murder Road, according to that comment.
Excuse me.
Did you catch that, Tommy?
So we're maintain the buffer between Middlesex Road and the facility.
And between the Murder Road abutting property and the facility. Did that capture it, Larry?
Yes, it does.
Mr. Chairman, Mr.
Yep.
Bruce, I'm wondering if just a more generalized condition that says to the maximum extent practical, the applicant shall maintain all natural vegetation outside the fence of the facility. I mean, that's, regardless of whether it's Murder Road or it's.
Yep.
um,
I'm good with that if the rest of the board's okay.
I'm
That's
fine
a
with that.
question of the applicant, whether they're okay.
Yes, Chairman, I was thinking, something more general, but we do show on our plans a tree clearing line. And so that'll be memorialized with any approval that you have. And if we go beyond that, then we would be, outside of the approval. So,
I would amend that to say outside the tree clearing line shown on the plans as opposed to the fence.
Right.
And with
that
that,
way it's not
thank
in
you.
conflict. Yeah.
In the past too, we have had conditions that prior to clearing of the site, the planners would walk the site to ensure that the clearing is as shown on the plan. Don't know if we want to get into that detail or not, but that has been done in the past.
Speaking as one board member, all these solar arrays, if they go cutting a lot more than they're supposed to, it's a lot bigger deal for them than just this one project. But I'm okay with just holding them to the plan and myself, but
Agreed.
I don't oppose if somebody wants an additional condition to get staff up there.
No,
No, that's fine. I mean, prior to issuance of the use permit, we typically inspect the site. So we could catch it after the fact, that's okay too. Or we could just coordinate with the developer.
Okay, well, I'll proceed with the motion, and when we get there,
Okay.
we can tie it down. First of all, I've got to make motions on the waivers. The first, and these waivers have been supported by staff. First one is, I move that we grant waivers from 175-10A and 225-29A.1, requirements for buffering against residential properties, including landscaping and street trees. based on the presence of existing vegetation and topography on the perimeter of the project, no additional screening is needed.
I
Okay,
second that.
so do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, anybody in opposition? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you. Second waiver?
Second waiver, I move that we grant a waiver from 175-5A.9 for the submission requirement of a landscape plan.
Second that again.
Second.
All right. We have a second, I guess, Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposition? All right, hearing none, that passes. So we're on to the main motion.
Okay. I move that the site plan application for Middlesex Road Solar 1 LLC, Rego Solar Systems Incorporated, tax map R08, lot 47C, is in compliance with the standards in 175, 225, and the specific requirements in 225-60.19 solar energy conversion system based on the following. 1, board review of site plan and general performance standards addressed on pages 43 through 52 of Middlesex Road Solar's revised site plan review application dated 9/5/2020. Number 2, board review of the applicant's comment letter dated 9/3/2020. Number 3, board review of the memo from the planning department dated 9/11/2020, stating that the project has been evaluated by town staff and the town's consulting engineer, indicating the performance standards will be met with the 13 conditions of approval cited on pages 2 and 3. Number 4, after further project review tonight, the board has also added the following conditions. Number 14, the applicant will finalize the status of the habitat mitigation fee in consultation with the town planning staff prior to the issuance of any use permit, if any. And number 15, prior to permit issuance, town staff will walk the site to ensure clearing of vegetation.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, I didn't catch, was that Bruce? Were you first in?
Don't think so, Don.
Okay, then Ron. Okay.
I might have been first in, but
Oh, Larry. Okay, Larry seconded then. All right, is there further discussion? Hearing none?
just one quick question, Tommy.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you were reading that, did you you put the date of the site plan submission as being what? I missed it.
The first one, I said board review of site plan and general performance standards on 9/5/2020.
Oh, okay.
You good, Larry?
I'm good. Yes, I'm fine.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Seeing or hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Do we have anybody that opposes? Seeing none, it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, David.
Have a good evening.
You too. Okay, so we're going to move into item number 3. Tom, I'm recusing myself. Tom will be leading this public hearing. And Tom, after the public hearing, if you would also go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn.
Hey,
And
Dawn.
I'm going
Dawn.
mute. Yeah,
Don, we can put you on the attendee if you'd like to move to an attendee.
that'd be fine.
Okay. So Tom,
Ready,
you're
Rod?
all set.
Okay. The next applicant for this evening is Aroma Joe's Coffee Franchising LLC. Project is located in the Village Center Zone and is a mixed-use building with a drive-through and walk-in coffee shop, barber shop, and residential units located at 1 2nd Street, tax map U05, lots 22 and 50. This is a public hearing and is before the board for conditional use and site plan approval. We will begin by having the applicant present their vision of the project. When they are finished, I will ask the board if they have any questions or comments of the applicant or staff. After that, I will open the public hearing. Upon completion of the public hearing, I will return to the board for additional discussion on how they wish to proceed. I assume that Kevin Clark is speaking for Aroma Joe's. Is that correct, Kevin?
Yes, that's correct, Tom.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you tonight?
Thank you. Anytime you're ready, please begin.
Okay, just a little housekeeping first. I know we wanted to finish by 9. If we should, do we need to have a vote to go past 9 if we're still in our presentation and discussions? Or do we just, or is that just to start a project before 9?
I think when we get to 9 o'clock, we'll need to pause and take a vote of the board, see if we should continue.
We get the score of the game, any Celtics are playing.
I can send out an assignment for someone to get the score if you want, Bruce.
No, that's all right.
If I can share my screen, I can get started. I think I have the ability now. Okay. Good evening, folks. Kevin Clark from Sightlines, representing Aroma Joe's financing or franchising, excuse me. And with me tonight, Lauren Goodrich, Allison Goodrich from Aroma Joe's. They are attendees. Diane Morabito, our traffic engineer, and Tim Bryant, attorney. So we will get moving with this. As we said, the project's at 1 2nd Street. We're here for site plan and conditional use permit. And here's a rendering of the building here, but we'll get more into that as we move forward. Sort of broken up the presentation into 4 parts. The project overview is the site plan, then the architecture. Then I'll have Diane jump in. So when it comes time for that, Andrew, if you could allow Diane to join as a participant, and then we'll go through the conditional use criteria. Just a comment was we started with trying to do a traditional coffee shop at this corner site, and after nearly 11 months of design iterations and meetings and work with consultants and staff, peer reviewers, this is where we are at this point. Start with the site plan. We're in the Village Center Zone. The property is 2 parcels combined to be 0.62 acres. The use is classified, or one use is classified as a restaurant fast food, which that requires a conditional use. As we're probably all aware, the definition of restaurant is sort of redefined by our current state of affairs. Even traditional restaurants had to utilize takeout or drive-up service to survive the last few months, and that sort of is opposed to the definition of restaurant in the ordinance, which actually defines a fast food restaurant by a negative, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. Building is located within 25 feet of the max setback from Main Street. So we've aligned that that way. The building has a 2,500 square foot footprint. We have 2 commercial tenants on the first floor and apartments on the second floor. The access is off from Second Street. There's no access to Route 196 or Main Street. We have drive-through circulation that is a little different than the traditional, as it was not the desire of the town for us to circulate the building, but to place the building adjacent to Main Street. We've provided new sidewalk connections along the Main Street corridor and down Second Street. We've provided outdoor seating and patio area. Since our last meeting for our sketch plan with the board, one of the major concerns was the building height. We feel we've addressed that, and we meet the criteria of the ordinance and definitely the spirit of the comprehensive plan and the Main Street study. The building location, as I said, was placed adjacent to Main Street. We've added additional sidewalk connections. Our sidewalks, we've moved a step towards urban sidewalks with the tree planting. As you'll see them as we move on. We've had numerous iterations with staff, with Tom Saucier for stormwater review, traffic peer review, met with the fire chief, met with DOT for a scoping meeting. We've also requested 3 waivers, and I can show them to you as we go through the site plan. The first one is for on-street parking. As part of our DOT permitting, DOT said no parking on Main Street at this time. And we also, Second Street doesn't lend itself to on-street parking. So we requested a waiver for that. Setback from the access drive to one of the property lines is less than 5 feet. So it's at 3 feet. We've requested a waiver for that. And then since the building, due to the unique property lines, the one corner of the building is only 2 feet from a property line adjacent to the Main Street 196 right of way. If it's less than 5, the ordinance requires a 6-foot sidewalk, 3-foot esplanade. And working with staff, we've proposed an 8-foot sidewalk that is at the curb with the tree plantings on the rear side of that. And staff was in support of all 3 of those waivers. Here's a site plan. I'm hoping you folks can see that. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. Is that visible or not? All right, so here's Main Street, Second Street. We've got the access off from Second Street, 2-way access. Comes in, there's parking on both sides, the drive-through lane, which comes back out. We've spaced that 50 feet to accommodate DOT requirements. We have sidewalk connections to Main Street here to the rear of the building, as you would call it, the rear. We have 2 service doors and 2 apartment access doors on that side of the building. There's a front door to the front retail shop, the patio area, sidewalk connection, a reinforced turf fire lane for fire department to access the building and not have vehicles trapped in the parking lot if there's an incident. We've added sidewalk from the current end of the sidewalk on Route 196 down along all of Main Street, along Second Street, and also proposing to continue that along portion of the frontage of the adjacent property with painted crosswalk to extend it across that large curb cut and connect into the sidewalk where it picks up again on Monument Place. Here's our landscaping plan. You can see these cutout areas fit the radius of the tree. So the trees can be placed closer to the sidewalk and sort of add some shading, street tree type situation. But yet the roots are not under the sidewalk. So we have a little area for mulch and so forth. So it gives it a sort of a unique feel that we have not seen before, more of an, as they said, an urban feel. For architecture, again, the building is 2,500 square foot, 2 commercial tenants on the first floor, apartments on the second floor. The design is classic New England to fit along some of the traditional buildings along Main Street. The building height is now at 46 feet, 10 inches, with the midpoint being at 35 feet per the revised code. That makes this building taller than the town hall or the fire station. And these changes to make the building taller, as well as some other site changes, provide a significant cost to the project over a traditional one-story coffee shop. The staff had some comments on the architecture, articulation on the drive-through side of the building, which we addressed. There's some exposed concrete on one corner, which we can address. And then they had some concern with the northerly facade, which I think I would look for any input from the board, but I think it's a fine looking building. And I don't know that anything additional needs to be placed on that side. Here are the architect's working drawings. This is the Second Street facade. You have 2 retail entrances, windows to the second floor apartments. So you can see the midpoint at 35 feet and the ridge line at 46 foot 10 with a 10-12 pitch. This would be the side facing Main Street, which has another retail entrance there, a dormer, and apartment windows above. This would be the drive-through side facing west. So you have the 2 drive-up windows that are bumped out and have small canopies. There's mechanical space that's cut into the roof and has a fence screening that's also facing that side of the building. And then the rear portion of the building, that would be facing north. You can see the service entrances as well as apartment entrances to that side of the building. Sort of a footprint. Aroma Joe's, 1,444 square feet. Retail, a little over 900. 2 apartments on the second floor. And I threw in here the slide from the Main Street plan. This sort of shows the desired cross section, which was a 2.5-story building with commercial on the first floor, residential above. We exceed the 35 feet since the ordinance was revised since then, and it had sidewalk, trees, a yard area. So I think we've really adhered as well as we could to that cross section. Now we got a quick video of this. It's basically a walk around of slides of the renderings of the building, and then we can ask any questions we have about the architecture after that. So get that rolling. So here's, as we're walking up Main Street towards the north, here's renderings. They're slightly changed because when we actually completed the renderings, we still had the esplanade there. We've now pushed that sidewalk up to the curb and made it wider. So some of the trees may be in a different location. This would be the parking lot side, looking at the building from Second Street, the front area, the patio area, the sidewalks. The sidewalk to meet ADA grading had to be moved over to the side of the site. That gives you a quick overview. Okay, it's not going to cooperate. Oh, sorry about that. So here's the sort of the north facing side. There is one corner of the building that has exposed concrete, and we could look at when we finalize construction drawings, we can look at bringing down the siding or adding some cladding or something to dress up that corner. And you can also see that north side of the building with the doors and sidewalk. There'll also be some additional landscaping that doesn't show up on here in this area behind the sidewalk. I'm going to let Diane jump in now and talk about traffic if she's out there. I can't tell. Andrew, can you let Diane in?
I think I'm in.
All right, great. Just let me know when you need me to flip.
Yeah. Diane Morabito. Kevin, you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So we start a traffic study by looking at the trip generation. This project will generate 137 trips in the AM peak hour. Those are one-way trips, 68 in and 69 out. During the PM peak hour, since a primary trip generator is a coffee shop, there's a lot fewer trips. It's only 54 trips, 28 in and 26 out. Given this trip generation, our study period was the AM morning peak hour period. Next. So what's important here is our trip types. During our AM peak hour analysis period, 90 of our 137 trips are pass-by trips. Those are trips that are already on Main Street or already on Monument Place. So they're really not new trips to the adjacent street system. They're just diverting into the driveway. In terms of new trips generated by the project, there's 47, 23 in and 24 out during that morning peak hour. And these are probably slightly conservative also, in that it assumed that all three uses, the apartments, the barber shop and the coffee shop, all peaked within the same hour, and they'll likely be offset a little bit. So we believe the numbers are slightly conservative. Kevin, you can go to the next. The project, because we exceed 100 driveway trips in the morning peak hour, requires a traffic movement permit from MainDOT. We submitted sections 1 through 6 of that application to DOT in mid-April. We had our scoping meeting back in May 28th with the project team, DOT, and town officials. We submitted section 7, the actual traffic study, on July 1st, and we have a draft TMP that DOT issued back on August 3rd. If we look at the traffic analysis, I'm sure you all know, traffic operations are defined in terms of level of service. It's much like a report card ranging from A to F, with A being free flow and no delay to F being extreme or excessive delays. Next slide. Our 2020 build results with the project fully occupied showed that Main Street and 2nd Street will function at a high level of service A, with only 4.8 seconds of delay. And the site drive and 2nd Street also functions at a high level of service A. So based upon this, we have no capacity concerns within the study area. And one of the concerns at the scoping meeting was whether or not a right turn lane was warranted on Main Street at 2nd Street to store that traffic turning onto 2nd Street. It is not warranted, which pleased the town officials in that you want to have a Main Street feel and don't want to have turn lanes. So no turn lane was warranted, which is considered favorable for the project to maintain that Main Street feel. Next slide. We calculated the traffic impact fee for the Topsom Mall area. Again, our 47 new trips at $250 per trip gives us an impact fee of $11,750. Safety analysis for this project was important. When we first submitted sections 1 through 6 of the application to DOT, we had no high crash locations within the site area. When we updated the accident data to 2017 to 2019 to do the section 7 traffic study, the intersection of Route 201 and 196 now just meets the high crash criteria with a critical rate factor of exactly 1.0 and 39 crashes. So it's just become a high crash location, and it was not previously. We analyzed the collision diagram, which showed the primary pattern were rear end collisions, which are very typical of signalized intersections. 5 were side swipes occurring on the Route 201, no, Route 196 approaches, where you have multi-lanes. 4 were angle collisions, 2 of which at least were due to red light running. So we found there was no real pattern evident of correctable type crashes. You can go to the next one. We do have, I said, our draft TMP, and what's basically required in that TMP is the sidewalks that we're proposing along 2nd Street and Main Street. They're also requiring the project to provide centerline striping on 2nd Street because there is none there now, as well as edge striping, and then cross hatching at Monument Place to square that intersection up and align vehicles properly. There's going to be a crosswalk also across Monument Place, which doesn't exist today. One of the things in the TMP is to signalize the eastbound and westbound channelized right turn lanes at Route 196 and Route 201 to address safety concerns given the additional volumes through this intersection from the project. I'd just like to say that the additional volumes are really minimal. We're talking about 4 new right turns onto Main Street during the peak hour, 7 left turns, and 4 through movements. So there are 2,919 vehicles there under no build conditions, and we're adding 15. So it's a 0.5% increase. So our feeling is that that's a pretty minimal increase and that we're not going to have a significant impact. We also feel that the best safety improvement there isn't necessarily clear at this point in time. The TMP is suggesting that those right turn ramps be signalized to improve pedestrian safety. I should also note that when we did the collision diagram analysis, there were no crashes involving pedestrians or pedestrian incidents in those slip lanes. But the Thompson peer reviewer, and I believe Tom is also here, suggested that a better option is to convert those right turn lanes to standard urban lanes. So it's just the project feels that ideally it's an existing condition that we're not impacting much, and we're not sure that it should be solely the responsibility of this project. I think the applicant would be happy to pay an impact fee towards it, but it seems like it's a lot to ask for a small project with a small number of trips. And that's pretty much a summary of where we're at right now. So again, 137 one-way trips, 90 are passed by, 47 new, no capacity concerns. 196 and 201 just meets the high crash criteria. No correctable crash patterns were identified. The Thompson Mall area impact fee is $11,750. And we feel that given the minimal new trips from this project, the fact that it's an existing condition, that an application of an impact fee would be more sensible and fair, especially since we're not sure what is the best solution there quite yet. But that's the opinion of the applicant and myself.
Thank you, Diane. Now I'd like to move on to the conditional use criteria. There are 7 criteria to address when you request conditional use. The first one is the use is compatible and similar to the general categories of the uses of the neighboring properties. Our immediate neighboring properties on the west are a restaurant, dance studio, auto service center. On the south is a restaurant. Easterly and northeasterly across Main Street and 196 are auto dealerships. Northerly across 196 is a residential, which is now non-conforming in the VC zone. If we expand this neighborhood out, there is no definition in the ordinance. I just chose a number of 1,000 feet just to see what other uses are within 1,000 feet of the property. If you do that, there are 2 banks with drive-throughs, 2 fast food restaurants with drive-throughs, 4 auto dealerships, 2 gas stations, and 3 sit-down restaurants, all located within 1,000 feet of property, as well as the town office and fire station. All those stated uses are also within the VC zone. The massing and form of the building is similar to the historical architecture found along Main Street. So I think based on that information, we're compatible with the neighboring properties. Here's an overview of the area. Here's our site. We have the high school that's being reconstructed to the north, an auto dealership, bank with a drive-through, fast food with a drive-through, another fast food and gas station over here, the town hall, fire station, gas station, car dealership, bank with a drive-through. So you can see we're not proposing something that is that different from the general area. It's just a blow up of our close site with Copper Kettle Restaurant and the new pub south of us. Second conditional use criteria. This one is a bit more lengthy. The use is compatible with the comprehensive plan and the anticipated future development of the neighborhood. I went through the comprehensive plan, tried to find items that we did address, and I've stated several of those. They included desiring a place to gather, having a coffee shop, something with indoor, outdoor seating, streets for people. So we were extending the sidewalk from 192nd to 2nd Street, from 196 to 2nd Street, and then down 2nd Street as well. Places to gather, indoor and outdoor seating. I've got a graphic below of items that people wanted to see in the next 5 to 10 years. Also the pedestrian sheds to sort of show you things that are within a 5-minute walk of this site. One of the goals of the Upper Village is infill development and new mixed-use developments. And we're proposing a mixed-use development, neighborhood transformation, mixed use and walkable. We're trying to comply with that as well. The comp plan does not really discuss drive-throughs in the text. I read it and I also did a word search to try to find it. And that phrase is not really addressed in the comp plan. This proposal advances many of the goals that we stated above, and including and supporting extending pedestrian-friendly routes, providing future connectivity to an adjacent property, which I can show you that on the site plan, if and when that property is redeveloped, and sets the architectural tone for future developments. So in the 5 to 10 years, some of the things that people said they wanted to see were more local businesses and retailers, coffee shop, place for high schoolers to get Wi-Fi, a store near the school, pedestrian accessible areas, make the walk more friendly to Brunswick. So we provided some more connection for that. Mixed use residential development, we're including residential in our proposed mixed use. As you see on the future neighborhood centers, we're located in this area right here to the north. We're within the 5-minute influence of the high school, and to the south within the 5-minute influence of the town hall facility. And the comp plan had some graphics completed of some potential concepts. This concept is really not feasible, as this building here is much too large to fit on the property. The size of the property from 2nd Street to 196 is just not that large. Although we are proposing a smaller building that does have sort of outdoor patio area. So I think we're somewhat conforming with some of the desires of the comp plan. maybe not the same type of buildings, but we're up close to the street, wider sidewalks, patio areas. We're including those in our proposal. As far as compatibility with the Main Street study, we've provided a village scale building. It's very similar in its lines and size to other buildings along Main Street. Building height, we've created a taller building and we've placed it in close proximity to Main Street. It's a multi-use building that includes housing. We've proposed pedestrian improvements. One of the comments regarded was using at-grade or painted sidewalks along 2nd Street. And we're proposing that out of respect for the operation of the neighboring business. If we were to close up the frontage, the large curb cut at the front of the Copper Kettle, and only put in 2 standard curb cuts, we would effectively put a serious parking crunch for their customers. And so we chose to put a paved sidewalk up to the edge of their existing curb cut, and then more or less a crosswalk across their existing open curb cut, so as not to disrupt their operations. I think our design supports the desired street section, and although it's desirable, we are not able to provide, or the on-street parking is not feasible this time. The Main Street plan does state that sit down, and this is the only mention or prohibition of drive-through that I can find in either the Main Street plan or the comp plan, is where it states sit down, non-drive-through, in parentheses, restaurants are desired business types for the zone. So that's really the only place where it's discussed. However, it did not recommend an ordinance provision in their recommended ordinances to prohibit them, and neither does the comp plan. Another component of our compatibility, critical aspect of the VC zone is small, locally owned retail and service businesses. That's what we're proposing. This use is a coffee shop, which is actually far less impact use than a traditional fast food restaurant. And that can be seen by our traffic counts and the amount of lower amount of stacking that we need on site of a traditional fast food restaurant. This project financially does not work without the drive-through. So that's really not an option to eliminate that. And I'd also like to point out the letter from the previous chair of the Main Street Committee that supports the project, as well as from previous owners of the property. Here's a graphic from the Main Street plan itself, and it shows some proposed mixed-use buildings, parking, and landmark buildings for this general area. As you can see, we're located here. I would say our size is actually smaller than that proposed size, but our parking aligns sort of with that central parking. We're proposing to allow a future connection through to the adjacent property if that should come forward. There's a little blow up. So here is our site. Our building is located essentially there. We have the driveway and parking coming in, and more parking in the rear, with a connection, future connection available to come over to service these other properties should they get redeveloped at some point in the future. One of the other recommendations for the Village Center was a new development should define the street. And we feel that our building, the architecture and the placement of the building do define that edge of Main Street. Here's a graphic showing, again, the sidewalks, but it's extended out to show all of 2nd Street down to Monument Place. And you can see we'd be doing restriping, providing a crosswalk across 2nd Street, although at this time there's no sidewalk going south to connect. No sidewalk to connect to. We would normally have to extend sidewalk to our property line, which we're doing, and we would also connect this continue this paved sidewalk over to the existing curb cut. So we are providing quite a bit of pavement along Second Street for that sidewalk. For this curb cut, as you can see, the Copper Kettle Restaurant cars park here, and they need this area for maneuvering. That's the way their parking lot is set up. It would not be something that would get designed or approved in today's world, but it is the way they have operated for many years. And that's, if we were to close this up, we would prevent many of their customers from being able to park there. Another comment, post-COVID, drive-throughs are not just encouraged, but they're preferred to protect customers and employees. In a case study, 37% of respondents said drive-through availability would be extremely important to them moving forward. One restaurant group reported that their drive-through visits increased 26% in April, May, and June, and represented 42% of all of their visits. In July, when other restaurants were reopened, drive-through visits still increased 13%. So in today's world, they've become an important component. Third conditional use, anticipated traffic for the proposed development will not cause adverse negative impact on the neighborhood surrounding the proposed development. I think Diane's presentation on the traffic speaks to that. I'd just like to reiterate that the safety concerns at this intersection are already existing. The existing conditions are not materially impacted by our project, only a 0.5% increase. And we're more than happy to contribute impact fees proportional to the scale of our project. Conditional use number 4, no noise, dust, odor, vibration, smoke. We don't propose to have any of those things that would affect the neighboring properties. Number 5 is physical characteristics of the site, including locations, low soils, drainage, vegetation cover are suitable for the proposed use. It's an existing developed site. It's at the intersection. There are utilities, and the site suits itself for redevelopment. Number 6, the use will not constitute a public or private nuisance. I think we'll demonstrate that through our application and approvals. And number 7, any other requirements, applicable provisions of the code as deemed necessary are met. And I think we are moving forward with that. In summary, the site plan ordinance criteria have been met. There were committee letters submitted prior to our proposal actually being submitted and reviewed. Those are by TDI and a couple other committees. I'm not sure if those are intended to be personal views or if they're statements from those committees. However, members of the Main Street Committee that worked on the Main Street plan for several years have spoken in favor of the project. If this project moves forward, it'll demonstrate a commitment to the vision for the Village Center, and it will be a catalyst to start Main Street redevelopment. Safety concerns at the intersection are existing, and we're not contributing a large impact to those, and we would be happy to pay impact fees to the scale of our project. Post-COVID, drive-throughs are important to protect customers and employees. And while staff has provided comments on some of these criteria, it's solely the discretion of the board to determine if the standards have been met. I'd like to ask Andrew to allow Lauren and Allison and also Tim Bryant to be able to make some additional closing comments.
Andrew, will I be able to turn on my camera as well or no?
No, unfortunately not. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, hello everybody, Lauren Goodrich, 921 Augusta Road, Bowdoin. In this COVID world, staring into a piece of glass is pretty hard to connect with you. but I'll do the best I can. Before I get started, I do want to ask Scott, that picture behind you, Scott, on the wall, is that a submarine?
No, that's a lighthouse.
Oh, it looked like a submarine from here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so, you know, I'm born and raised in Maine, in central Maine. I did 8 years in the nuclear Navy as a nuclear reactor operator during the Cold War. Came back to Maine, started my first business in 1992. I moved into Bryan Maynard's Thompson Mobile Home Park, lived there for 3 years until I was able to raise enough money to buy this piece of land in Bowdoin and build my home here where I've raised my family. So I'm local as it can get. You know, as Kevin eloquently pointed out, we did the sketch plan review. We met with the board. You know, there was a lot of comments that we took into account. And, you know, I weighed the pros and cons of moving forward with the project. And if it hadn't been for the fact that I'm local and my daughter, I'm doing this with my daughter who lives also close by in Durham. And this is going to be her project. Long-term, she's going to own it. I wouldn't have gone forward with this project because it's already passes economic viability. Short-term, long-term, it can survive. We've had many redos, pages and pages of comments from staff, and we've addressed 90% of those, most of them exactly the way the staff had requested. I would point out in you know, in Nation Restaurant News today, National Restaurant Association, there was an article, and you can look it up online right now. In the last 6 months, 100,000 restaurants have closed in the United States. That's millions of jobs, tens of thousands of families that have gone in bankruptcy and lost their livelihood. I feel very blessed that in 2012, I chose to start the Aroma Joe's franchise company in Maine and insisted upon only doing locations with a drive-through. Because if I hadn't done that, I would have been one of those restaurateurs that had closed restaurants and gone bankrupt. As Kevin pointed out, 37% of customers today during COVID will not even go to a restaurant unless they
Mr.
have.
Goodrich,
Yes.
I interrupt you for just a second. I apologize.
Yes, sir.
But it's past 9 o'clock, and need to check with the staff. Do we vote to extend at this point, or can Mr. Goodrich finish?
This is Rod. Yeah, you folks should make a positive motion to keep going here, and that would just ensure that the applicant will be able to finish what they're talking about.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved to extend to hear, at least to hear the applicant and all their people.
Second.
Second?
Second.
It's seconded by Scott, okay? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, Mr. Goodrich, can please continue.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief. I'm about done. My point is that this is a new world, and we all have to be bold, and the world has changed, and we're going to have to change with the new requirements of what this pandemic has done to us. One of the other comments that I've seen or heard is that I've tried to pigeonhole this project into this lot. That couldn't be further from the truth. This project has escalated far more than I ever envisioned, based upon what the town had asked and what their vision was. And that's why it seems like it might be pigeonholed. Yes, there are other areas in town that might be able to take a drive-through, but to be honest with you, show me one that's economically viable and that can be financed by a bank and not cost tens of thousands of dollars more per year than this site. You know, to get financing on any project like this, a small business owner has to own the property to get financing. Otherwise, you have to get a 50-year lease, subordinate mortgages, and it gets complicated and very hard or impossible to finance. This project was economically viable at one point, and that's why I chose this property. And that's it. I thank you for your consideration, board. I really appreciate it. Have a great evening. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, sir. Anything else, Kevin?
I think Tim Bryant wanted to speak as well.
And Mr. Bryant?
Let Tim in.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, we can.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Tim Bryant. I'm a resident of Falmouth, Maine, and I'm a partner at the Freddie Flaherty Law Firm in Portland. And I'm here this evening on behalf of the applicant. I'm not going to take up much of your time, but I want to emphasize one theme. Before I do that, I want to say thank you to everyone who has played a role in this bringing this application to you this evening, and for all of you in taking the time to consider it. I know planning board meetings, it's great service to the community that you're doing, and certainly staying up late at night to consider this is appreciated by my client and all of us. While there may be differing views as to the potential outcome of this application, my clients understand that their development request is being taken seriously by all of you as members of the public whose decision it is to decide whether or not the application meets the standards. And the staff's provided some input, but it's ultimately up to all of you. The point I wanted to make for context is this. As Kevin indicated at the start of this presentation, and Lauren mentioned a minute ago, my clients came to the town of Topsom to develop an Aroma Joe's coffee shop. Their original version was to construct an 850 square foot building that had a drive-through. That's it. That's consistent with the rest of their locations. What they were hoping to do was to create a thriving small business that created jobs, paid property taxes, and became an integral part of the town community. In the 11 months that followed, my clients and their talented development team engaged in countless meetings, conferences, and email exchanges with various individuals who expressed an interest in the project. One of the main themes underlying those communications was a request to have the project be a catalyst for what I understand to be a sketched out or fleshed out, but still essentially dormant Main Street plan. Wanting to be good corporate citizens, my clients began by enthusiastically embracing these ideas and concepts. Unfortunately, as the project evolved and the many months went by, those requests grew and grew into the 5,000 square foot building with mixed residential and commercial use that's before you tonight. That project, which was not my client's initial vision, has vastly exceeded the cost that they originally estimated for a viable project, and will now cost hundreds of thousands of dollars more than they originally envisioned. Most recently, my clients were asked to spend untold additional sums to address long-standing concerns regarding the abutting highway intersection and related traffic issues that will continue to exist even if this project is not approved and have been of a long-standing nature. I respectfully suggest to all of you tonight that enough is enough, and these requests place us well beyond the Rubicon of reasonableness and what's sensible and fair. The presentation tonight clearly illustrates that the applicant has met the standards for approval. How far this project has evolved illustrates my clients will be first-class members of the Topsom business community. And for all these reasons, we respectfully ask that you do what is sensible and fair and approve the application before you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. You have anyone else, Kevin?
No, that's it for tonight, for our side of the presentation. Thank you.
You take your shared screen down, please.
You bet.
Thank you. Okay, well, back to the board, and I'm going to go around the horn and see if they have any questions or comments. Scott, can we start with you?
Okay. Yeah, I guess number of comments, questions. Just have a couple to start with. And that is back to the traffic study. It sounded like there were quite a few pass-bys as far as, I think it was 90 pass-bys in that morning hour period. What are you considering pass-by? Certainly it's not a pass-by on 2nd Street. Is that 196? Is that Main Street? Is that Monument Place? Is it all of them added together?
It was Main Street,
Just Main Street heading south.
correct.
90 pass-bys in that direction.
Well, let me check. We might have taken some from Monument Place as well. Yeah, we took some from Monument Place as well.
Okay.
The trips from the west coming in Monument Place.
And the ones on Main Street are coming from primarily 196 turning right.
Yeah, the ones from Main Street, or they're coming from Main Street.
But 196 on the Main Street, not the intersection.
Right, and that's 90, that's both ways. So that's goes in one-way trip. So there were 25 right turns in from Main Street and 20 turns in from 2nd Street from Monument Place.
And the other item on the traffic is, I know there's a lot of text in that report saying where the numbers come from that you put into your model. But Kevin brought up one thing, and that is obviously the numbers that go into the model are pre-COVID. So I'm not sure how conservative they are as far as if this were to go in and have the drive-through, given the, I guess, the new prevalence of folks wanting to.
Actually, we have some information on that. We use numbers that were like the highest numbers ever recorded at any of the Aroma Joes. But Lauren had some numbers just the other day that he was saying his maximum number of transactions was 60 per hour at his busiest store in Saco. This is information he gave me just the other day, which would equate to 120 trips. And again, we had, I think, 6 trips in there for the retail use and a couple for the apartments. So even in these COVID times, and maybe you can let Lauren back in, but the numbers he told me the other day, even now, was 60 transactions at his busiest store in Saco.
Okay. Yeah, and as far as just anecdotal evidence of getting in line or driving by a couple of the other establishments that serve coffee through drive-throughs in Topsom, 8 cars in line is minimal at Dunkin' Donuts, and I don't go to Starbucks that much, but I see them coming around the corner to US Cellular side of the building quite often. So it seems like
Dunkin' generates
better than you think there, but that's just anecdotal. It's not modeled. It's not professional traffic information.
All the numbers we have 3 different coffee shops that are common in Maine. And basically we have developed equations here in Maine for all of them. And Dunkin's are by far the highest. They're generally twice the traffic of Aroma Joe's or Starbucks. And Starbucks and Aroma Joe's Starbucks usually like 130 trips, and we use that higher 130 for this, even though it's more likely to be a little bit less than that.
Thank you.
But you're correct, Dunkin's generate on the order of 250, sometimes 300 trips an hour.
Yeah. And then I guess it really wasn't a traffic part of it, but as far as, I know we talked about the safety internal traffic, it came up in a lot of the comments from reviewers, the peer reviewers, et cetera. And it sounds like you guys are thinking that painted crosswalks are fine, that you don't need raised crosswalks. I mean, there's a lot of cross traffic here, the way it's set up, which I understand why it is set up as it is, but are there concerns safety wise for pedestrians and the cross traffic with the vehicles there too?
it was signed and and provided a different material, and there's signage there at the drive-through to basically tell people that, be on the lookout for pedestrians. But again, the number of trips that, you've got probably 40 or 50 trips in an hour entering the drive-through, because again, we're talking one-way trips. So you probably have 40 cars an hour going through there. Not that many pedestrians going in either. So yes, I believe it's more than safe. The numbers are very small. We're talking about a 100 to 200 level traffic movement permit. It's not like a Hannaford parking lot with, 500 trips an hour. We're talking 100 trips an hour with well-marked crosswalks and a very small number of trips and pedestrians.
Right. In the essence of time, I'll save my other comments concerning the conditional use till provide other people time to comment and the public to come in if we've got that time. So,
Thank you. Larry? Larry, would you like to chime in?
Yep, I just had to unmute. Question, because I'm not familiar with Aroma Joe's. Is that a menu, food type service, or is it just coffee and other such type drinks?
Larry, this is Lauren. 79% of our business is beverage, and 15 to 20%, depending on the location, is food items, snack items.
Okay.
I should add, we're not considered a traditional food service because we're served mostly snack items. We don't do any food preparation on site.
Okay, so you don't have like the hot breakfast sandwiches or anything else that?
Yeah,
you
so
see?
they're pre-cooked breakfast sandwiches that we just heat up in a toaster oven.
Yeah. Okay. And on one question I had on one of the elevation pictures, it shows like the balcony type situation up on the roof. Am I correct that is just a utility type balcony and not, someplace for people to hang out or?
That's correct, Larry. That's actually where the mechanicals for the building, AC units and exhaust hoods and things like that are in that area and screened by the fencing that goes around there just to make it more attractive.
Yeah, and like Scott, I think I'll reserve with regard to the conditional use.
Okay.
So I'll defer at the present time.
Thank you. Bruce? Are you available?
Sure am. My questions, let's face it, this is about the drive-through and we can, and the consistency with a comprehensive plan. So whenever the right time to talk about that, I'm going to want to hear from staff a little bit more on that too. I believe this is the first time staff's ever written us a memo telling us what consistent is or isn't, or at least their opinion on that. So just kind of the background on how that came to be. That's a process thing. I do believe, and I just like clarification that it is. The applicant is saying it's within the sound discretion of this board to determine what's consistent with the comprehensive plan or consistent with the neighborhood. And I guess I'd just like confirmation from staff that that's true. So have some thoughts on that, but like the other board members, I'll wait till we get into post public hearing discussion about those conditional use standards. So that's all I have for now.
Thank you. Josh?
Yes, so like Bruce, I think I'll probably withhold my comments until I hear from staff and staff has an opportunity to go through its memo and explain its position with regard to whether or not the project is consistent with the requirements of the conditional use part of our code. I will mention that this is the first time that I've sadly, this is the first time I've heard this applicant present, and I'm surprised to hear that the applicant has gone from an 800 square foot building to a 2,500 two-story building with multiple uses. Having looked at the code and thought about conditional use, I don't know how we got here, but I'm interested to hear from staff sort of lay it out for us. So I and maybe some other board members who may not have been at all the prior hearings can hear how this came about. But initially, I don't, as presented, having read through the applicant's materials, I don't have, unless I hear otherwise tonight, I don't have any concerns with granting the application.
Okay, thank you. Ron?
No, I'm gonna be like Bruce and stuff, but I think, overall, I like the project and stuff, but let's see what else is gonna happen.
All right, thank you. This time we'll open the public hearing.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt,
That's
Tom.
okay.
I was just wondering, typically we often have staff sort of go through their memo and explain, important aspects of the memo before we go to the public hearing. And I was wondering if we might be able to do that. And I did have one further thing I wanted to mention is that, I view my role as a planning board member to make sure that the application complies with our zoning ordinance. And while I appreciate that there are comments from other folks in the community about whether or not the project is appropriate, when we hear those comments, I hope that they can put them in the context of the zoning ordinance itself rather than a particular feeling as to whether or not a drive-through restaurant would be appropriate in the area. In other words, focus on the zoning ordinance and what the zoning ordinance requires us to determine.
Okay.
Tom, this is Rod.
Yes,
Can
go
you
ahead,
hear me?
Rod. Yeah.
Yep. Should I chime in now?
Yes, you can, sure.
So seems to me there's some clarity that needs to happen here, and to provide that for the board, as staff has seen this project review as somewhat controversial given the public letters received and comments throughout. We prepared a memo that did not push the board into findings of fact, either yay or nay, but for a discussion. And I hope that you read it as these are points for discussion and to resolve. One of the things is if you're making findings, especially with a conditional use that is seeing perhaps an appeal if it gets approved, or an appeal if it gets opposed, or if it gets not approved, that we're trying to ensure that you folks are making findings and coming to a resolution on some of the issues that have been identified. I feel like we've done that for your discussion and not provided you an opinion one way or the other. I will say it's hard to make a conclusion based on the comp plan and the Main Street plan that any future zoning efforts would be allowing a fast food restaurants in this zone. So when we do undertake a zoning effort that looks at form-based code, that discussion will come up at that point. But you folks under code, Josh, have to look at conditional use standards. That's in 225 and come to a finding on that. So these are not based on non-code issues. This is all based on codes. Again, we typically supply these memos for you folks to have these discussions and work through them.
Okay.
Well, I could, Mr. Chairman, if I
Yep. Go ahead.
only because I did read the memo, and I think it's your statement, Rod, that it's hard to imagine that any zoning ordinance in the future could allow, and to me, it was the drive-through, that was the big kicker in the
Yeah,
whole
that's,
thing.
that's what I was talking about.
Yep, yeah, as opposed to fast food or,
Or
you could
just-
have fast sit-down food or whatever.
mean,
It's the
the-
drive-through.
Well, and
And-
here's another snippet, Bruce, is the definitions need to be retooled as well. But
Agreed.
Yes, yeah.
Agreed. So I guess that was the statement that felt conclusory to me. And when I look at this, well, again, I'd like to hear from the public too. Because
No,
hear
that's
public
right.
comment as to their perception. My vision of what a Main Street vision was in terms of scale and orientation to the street and sidewalks and all those kinds of things are largely represented by this particular thing. The kicker
Yes.
is the parenthetical on Main Street that says no drive-throughs. And
Agreed,
so
agreed.
that's what it
And-
all comes down to. And
we wanted to pull that out, Bruce, so that your findings would be very accurate.
no, I
And again,
get it, and I
the
appreciate
findings,
I
and I
appreciate
know
it.
you understand this. Yep.
I'm not worried about what staff has done. I guess I just need to understand more the controversy and risk and all those kinds of things,
Well, I mean, honestly, it really is, it's making an appeal-proof decision, hopefully, and that's all. There's really, that's the risk identified.
Well, that's a risk that's equally borne by the applicant as well as the town. So
Yep.
I do appreciate it. And I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll move to the opening and the public hearing. And Andrew, could you describe that process one more time for everyone?
Yeah, sure. If there's a member of the public that's interested in speaking, just raise your hand via the chat function and I will promote you to be able to speak.
We have anyone?
I'm not seeing any raised hands at this time.
Okay.
I do have Raya.
Hi, Raya, are you there?
Hi, good evening. Raya Suomala, 605 Middlesex Road, a member of the Conservation Commission. I'm a little shy and reluctant to make a comment at this late hour. Both just my personal comment. I'm not representative of the committee without us all talking. I did want to, perhaps we're one of the committees in town that wrote a letter with concern about a drive-through. And that came very early in your process, quite some months ago, without any sketches, without any idea of what that site plan might look like. Sitting here, listening to your meeting, looking what you've developed and the amount of effort you've put into this project. Again, it's just to have some public comment and to represent. I'm very impressed with what you've done. So I wanted to put to rest some concern about opposition or appeal, at least from my own instinct at this time. It's quite a hard thing to do on a main street that already has a lot of drive-throughs that don't look like a little village that anybody might want. You've really put a lot of time and effort into making a property look something like what a vision of our downtown could be for the future. And I'm just very impressed with it. So a little bit of an unshaped comment right now, but I did want to represent a voice from both from the public and from the committee saying thank you very much. And I don't have concern.
Thank you, Roger. Anyone else?
Have Lynn Soroy.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, this is Lynn Soroy, 8 Madeline Avenue. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you. First of all, I want to thank everyone for their time tonight and extending the meeting as well. As you may or may not know, I am one of the previous property owners of 1 Second Street. Real quick, I grew up there. The initial parcel was the house with the land. The estate had the second parcel in surplus property, and we put a bid on it and won the bid to combine the two lots to make it usable in the mixed use zone. So I just felt that that was kind of important because as a family, if we didn't have that second parcel, we would really be stuck trying to sell that property. The only way it made it sellable was to have those two parcels joined together to make it large enough to do something on that property. So I just wanted to be clear on that. The second thing that I'm wondering about is with the whole drive-through issue. To my knowledge, the only other business on Main Street that has a drive-through is the credit union. So I find it hard to grasp my mind around the fact that that business and location on Main Street was permitted with a drive-through, but yet this business, which is actually going to be accessed off Second Street and not Main Street, the drive-through has suddenly become this huge issue. So I'd like clarification on that if possible, please.
And is there anything that,
It
Bob?
just- Yeah, I mean, it's a use-based code. That is not a fast food restaurant with a drive-through, so it's a permitted, not a conditional use. In this zone, it did not need to meet the conditional use standards.
But, hey, Rod, could I ask a question there? Was that approved after the Main Street plan?
I'd have to go back to the file, Kevin. I don't know if it was approved after the implementation of zoning or not.
But to that end, the Main Street plan does not say banks without drive-throughs. The Main Street plan says the restaurants without drive-throughs. So that, I think that's not a point.
thank you, Scott.
Have
Andrew?
John Cease.
Hi, John.
Hi, it's Jane Cease.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
I'm not a Topsom resident. I live in Brunswick, but I did live in Topsom for more than 20 years and was on the Main Street Committee, also on the Lower Village Committee. And I was not one of the people who was asked for my opinions probably since I don't live in Topsom anymore. But I did want to say that I really agree with the letter that that TDI wrote. I don't think that that the project is consistent with the vision of Main Street. And while I certainly respect the request that the comments refer to the zoning, et cetera, and other comments have referred to the planning. And it was very clear 15 years ago that kind of development was not what citizens wanted. And I think the comp plan reflects the same thing. So I just wanted to say that to let it be known as that one member of the committee felt that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else, Andrew?
I don't see any other raised hands at this time. If you're interested in speaking, please raise your hand.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Seeing none, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing come back to the board and ask them how they feel we should move ahead right now. Should we deal with the conditional use application?
Would it be possible, Mr. Chairman, to table this application at this time? And we do have a comprehensive plan implementation committee. I don't think that we've had I think an ex officio indication from them, but not a, I'm not sure if the committee has actually done anything substantive as of yet.
As a point of order, Mr. Chairman, before that's seconded, which is a non-debatable motion, usually when you table, I just want to jump in. Well, we have to apply rules that we have here, and you know, our best intent, our best perception of what those rules are, and compatibility with comprehensive plans. Anything that's said after now is just kind of rewriting history. There's plenty of opinions. They all appear to be all Topsom debating itself, as opposed to, do we have opponents to this project from abutters or across the street, or that's normally where the risk of suit comes from. It comes from an abutter who thinks it's incompatible with their neighborhood or the comprehensive plan. And I didn't hear any abutters tonight. Are there some that because the reason I'm asking is I will admit to, like, the letter, the memo, just the way I can see it on the screen, I literally have to get within 2 inches to read the words, because I didn't print it out beforehand. I did read it beforehand, memo from staff, but are there, I guess that's a question for staff, do we have opponents, abutters nearby that are objecting to this project?
There are no abutters that are proponents or opponents.
So this is the town of Topsom, various officials and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce, it's not
knowledgeable,
unprecedented
debating
for
with
you to seek recommendations from other committees, but you don't have to do that. But yeah, that happens once in a while, sure.
Yeah, well, I have been on the applicant side, and you have to comply with the rules that are there. There are rules, especially conditional use. Is this compatible with the neighborhood? I'm persuaded by the various descriptions and taking administrative notice of the actual abutting land uses in the area, that this isn't way out of whack with the neighborhood, to the extent there's a neighborhood. The question is the comprehensive plan and the parenthetical that says no drive-throughs. Comprehensive plans, which we're all keenly aware, you know, given, can support a lot of different directions. And so I tend to go with zoning that's done in conjunction with those comprehensive plans. I think if the drive-through was spilling right out on Main Street and having two entrances there, you know, just like the bank down, that might be a different thing, but they've got it off 2nd Street. You drive by that, you're going to see a big structure right up close to the road that's pedestrian friendly. From all the sketches and, you know, the idea that we're looking at a architect's rendering sketch to a Main Street vision to try to figure out what we meant for that. What it meant was buildings of certain mass close to the road. And we have that. And given that it is a go, no-go viability, which the applicant has been very clear about that from the get-go, that a drive-through is a go, no-go viability question. I'm not, by the way, weighing a whole bunch of COVID. I get it now, but I'm thinking longer term than that. But I'm just not going to be I guess I'm not going to question them and say, are you really sure? Can't you do this without a drive-through? I don't think that's our role. So I, for one, given the various opinions and all the work that was done, I think we are fortunate in some ways. This would have been a much harder case for me if it was the original application. That's just a 850 square foot thing plunking out, but they've done a lot of work to give more than a nod to what the Main Street vision is. And when you look around that area after this is built, and you look across the street, and you look down the street, and you look, this will be certainly promoting what I think was the core of what we're trying to do, and a drive-through on the back side off Second Street is not a disqualifier for me individually. So that's where I am, and I'm the rest on the traffic. I think we can get to that, but to me, for this issue is conditional use, compatibility with the consistency with the comprehensive plan and the drive-through, and that's where I am on that particular issue.
Thank you.
Bruce, I'd like to commend you, and that is exactly the discussion that I was hoping the planning board would be having this evening. Thank you.
Just one person.
Should we step through 225, 67? The the 7 elements of that and form a consensus on each element?
I just, given the lateness of the hour, I went to the one that I thought was the problem, the biggest problem. Traffic is the only other thing that I think we could have well, personal opinion, that is the other big issue. Even if you shade some numbers and take some administrative notice, Scott, of some of the Dunkin' Donuts and stuff like that and increase a few numbers, I still believe that the relative impacts of traffic to the conditions there are not significant enough to deny. That's my own personal opinion. The idea that you're having them reconstruct Main Street and changing lanes for that percentage feels like an overreach on our part, given the relative safety, especially given, remember, safety. This is philosophical too. We want a Main Street vision. Those things are inherently a little chaotic. There's a lot of things going on. It's not calm and comfortable. There's bikes and there's people and there's cars. That's what it's supposed to be. I mean, I'm not, Commercial Street in Portland is another level, but the idea that you have a bustling downtown with a lot of different modes of transportation happening and everything is completely calm and a sense of order, those two just are not, that's not what a village is. I mean, and if they were T-bone accidents at a light where people are getting killed, that's one thing. The kinds of accidents that will be here will be that are already there are side swipes and slowdowns and that kind of thing, which is normal for a bustling. I wonder what's going on over in Brunswick when they're backing out with their angled traffic in 4 lanes and people are scurrying across. In other words, it's chaotic, but it's definitely a Main Street. So that's a different philosophical thing that I think is just, we speak out of both sides of it. We want a village, we want things to be bustling, but we want them to be completely calm and safe and free from any chance of risk. And I don't think those two are compatible. So because of that, and I'm sorry, I was talking about the things that I thought would rise to the top. I thought the other ones were basically spoke for themselves, and I was focusing on the conditional use permit and consistency with comprehensive plan, traffic, and compatibility with the neighborhood, because I thought those would be the ones that would be the most problematic. And I've spoken enough, obviously.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Tom, I agree with Bruce. with, with the drive-through being on Second Street and stuff, to me, that looks like a good vision right there.
Thank you, Ron. Todd?
Yeah, I mean, I feel things snowballing, so maybe I'll say my piece now. I agree. Those are the three topics, 1, 2, and 3, that are the ones we need to discuss and deal with. I won't argue with Bruce about traffic. That's a losing argument. My worry here is, it is identified as a dangerous intersection. Perhaps this project would not have a major impact on the traffic there, but we're pushing it in the wrong direction. And the goal of that intersection is to make it safer, no matter what we're doing with this. And you can rightly say other projects that would bring traffic are going to impact it. The tough thing with this one is that right-hand turn off of 196 into Main Street with Second Street right down the road. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the other side, leaving the high school, coming in, trying to just go straight onto Main Street. And I got a bunch of hoo-has in the right-hand lane, trying to race me, to cut in front of all of us. While some people that are in that lane are trying to turn onto Second Street or Monument Place, and brakes are squealing. It's not a great location for the traffic there. But who knows? I certainly don't know enough about the traffic numbers and modeling to go with that. What I do know is it's rare for us to get input or a letter from any group, not group, any committee in Topsom. And we didn't get one, we got 3. And I know folks have tried to minimize their importance by saying they were before this latest plan. But the plan that we saw last fall was not an 800-foot drive-through Aroma Joe's. It was essentially this plan, but we were discussing roof heights, we were discussing, we were details on that. We also mentioned at the time that the conditional use was a big hurdle. So the conditional use has been out there as a hurdle all along. I congratulate Mr. Goodrich, for moving forward and feeling, putting forth this effort. And the project's definitely come a long way. But those letters from TDI, and it's from TDI as a group, it was signed as the group. And so it wasn't the Conservation Commission. The CPIC one was 3 members of CPIC, so it wasn't a CPIC authorized letter. But all of them, none of them were talking about the building height or how the snow removal was or whatnot. They were all talking about the drive-through, talking about the decades of planning that have gone into the Main Street plan and the comp plan, and that in their view, it was not compatible with that plan. I can't remember if it was in one of the letters or just thinking over my own. This certainly looks better than the original, certainly looks better than the traditional Aroma Joe's drive-through, whether it be the one in Lisbon or Brunswick or others. But it is, the first project since, Lee on the other side to go into Main Street for a while here. And I am concerned about if we do end up approving this, other parcels end up saying, oh, we've got drive-throughs, let's have another drive-through restaurant. That's most of my, there's other details on some of the presentation about the neighborhood. Yes, there are a couple drive-through restaurants down on 196, Dunkin' Donuts and Sam's. I don't know when the Tim Hortons first went in. That's the only one that's in Village Center. Dunkin' Donuts is not in Village Center. I'm not sure when Tim Hortons went in, if it went in before or after the Main Street, but the Main Street plan is for Main Street. So it's outside of the Main Street focus of the Village Center. So it's not really as pertinent to this issue, though it sounds like, there are, it is onto 2nd Street, but the building's facing Main Street. It's a Main Street building. And the majority of that traffic is going to be coming from Main Street. And given that it's a separated highway there too, a road, it confounds the traffic. So I think a case can be made that it is not compatible with the Main Street plan and the comp plan as inclusive of the Main Street plan and vision, with sit down, no drive through. So that's my piece.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Sure, Tom. This is Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Just a quick question for Rod. So just so I understand, looking at the memo again, and since we're going to focus on this drive-through question, the memo says the 2008 Main Street plan directly led to the creation of the Village Center zoning district. Okay. Does the Village Center zoning district say that drive-throughs are prohibited from the zone? Rod?
Yeah, I'm here, Josh. It does not.
Okay, so for me, I think it's the zoning ordinance that we're applying, and it doesn't prohibit drive-through restaurants. So I'm not hung up on that at all. So then I go to the conditional use performance standards in 225. And as I flip through them, I have to agree with Bruce that if you look around the neighboring uses, this use is fairly compatible with those uses. I mean, it's identical to or very similar to those uses. And the applicant has, in my opinion, jumped head over heels to do everything it could to come up with something that is even more consistent with what fits in the Village Center zone. I'm actually shocked, surprised, and happy that he's done that, but I think he's gone further than he has to have, and than he had to go. It's a place where people will walk to, sit down, have a coffee, typical of any Main Street business. So I don't know how you could have a use that's more compatible. I don't see how the drive-through really impacts that, in my opinion, in looking at the zone and the requirement and the existing uses and what could go there down the road. I don't have any background information on why 3 committees weighed in. I read through the memos. It seems to focus on something that is outside the code, in my opinion, and I'm just looking at the code because I think that's what I'm required to do. So I don't, in short, I think the use is compatible, and I think we should approve the conditional use application. The traffic, it's a busy intersection, right? It's so busy, and there have been so few issues, and this project's so small that I really don't see much of an impact. And having lived here for quite some time now, I've driven by that parcel for 15 years every day through that intersection, and I've never known what was there. I mean, I think it's about time something happens there, and this use seems to be particularly appropriate in my mind.
Yep. Thank you, Josh.
Tom, if I may.
Larry?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with most of the comments been raised previously, especially the most recent one. One concern I have with regard to the traffic, though, is if you have traffic coming out of downtown, so to speak, up Main Street, they're going to have to turn left onto Monument Way and then turn right onto Second Street in order to get to this drive-through or even sit-down location.
That's correct.
Okay. Was that taken into account with regard to the, traffic study?
Yes.
Because I know okay. 'Cause I know sometimes that left turn onto Monument can be a real bear, but with the traffic coming through the light, but.
And the number projected to be making that movement is 4 trips. So not a lot.
Okay, so your major part of the trips are coming 196 onto Main Street that way then.
Or coming Monument, yes, coming Monument Place as a left turn onto Second Street or a right turn off of Main Street. And there are some trips coming from Monument Place, but they're basically already making that left turn onto Monument Place, so it's not increasing that left turn movement onto Monument Place.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really have a major problem with finding the conditional use on this. So.
Okay, thank you. I, like all of you, have kind of gone back and forth with this, and I keep asking the question, why wasn't this codified in the zoning ordinance about the drive-through? And I would agree that it's not, to me, it's not as much of a problem as others might think it is, simply because there's no prohibition against it. My concern is traffic, that right-hand turn, Scott's right. All of us who have lived here over the years get squeezed in that section every once in a while. And that goes to the site plan issue of how do you deal with that. So I'm pretty much in agreement with all of you. So most probably we could use a motion at this point. Someone willing to make a motion?
I would be willing. This is where my limitations of the very small screen in front of me and various things that I would normally use as aids limits me. I mean, I can almost recite by heart the conditional use and the things, but I can't refer to the memos and the other. So I don't know if Josh or anyone else has this was controversial enough where staff didn't write it up, right?
Yeah, so Bruce, that's something, if you want to discuss that, you kind of direct staff to do that and assist with drafting those and come back at the next meeting, we could probably do that.
Is that something that is okay with the applicant? I mean, as opposed to doing it now. Right now, I'd be clicking on other websites and trying to remember and doing that kind of stuff, which isn't, after all the work that's happened, probably given it's.
You have some moving pieces here too. You have conditional use, you have site plan, you have some waiver. If you want it buttoned up and brought back for a vote, that's something we can do.
Well, that is something I would recommend. And honestly, it's literally the limitations of the technology in front of me. Normally, as you know, I'd have some hard copies in front of me. I would have been writing for the last 30 minutes, or something like that.
One of the unresolved issues, and maybe I'm unclear about, MDOT has issued a draft traffic movement permit with offsite improvements. It sounds like they do not want to entertain those. I don't know how to resolve that. That's something we can work on in the interim as well with guidance from the board.
Yeah, I'll definitely need to, just by way of other board members. I don't know anything about that. You know, that's probably the local traffic engineer, or at most you're up into, Landry level or something like that, but that's something, so I guess I would ask for time for that, because obviously if my vote as a planning board member would be contrary to the traffic movement permit that my agency issued, I'd have to get out of this, right? I'd have to not be participating in that. So I have not read the draft permit as well, so that's another reason. I think this is something that after 11 months, it's worth, I think for the purposes of this meeting, before we table it for that, I would make a motion that we could vote on that says at least the conditions of the consistency with the comprehensive plan and compatibility with the neighborhood. I don't want to move on the traffic until thank you, Rod, for that. I got to know what they're saying, but I think that would be a logical interim step to go on the record, because I think that is a major analytical decision in the flow chart here in one step or the other. So I don't know if that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman or staff, to make that particular interim finding before we table it for further action by staff consistent with that.
I would, if I can just jump in, Bruce, real quick and kind of respond there. I would recommend, and this is again up to the board, but if we could as staff come up with some findings that are context-based about this site in particular, at the direction of the board, to find positive findings that really button down, as Scott Libby had mentioned, setting precedent on drive-throughs. If we get another one tomorrow, we want to make sure that the finding you make is based upon the one you're reviewing tonight. And I want to have the wording for that to be pretty well done.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we should table it until for that purpose.
I would second that motion.
It's been moved that we table this application until the next meeting.
Another piece just before we end off here, whatever the board decides on this proposal, we cannot obligate the town to spending any funds for offsite improvements on private development. So, please read the MDOT draft and step through that. That's an important piece to this puzzle.
If I could just add, just real quick. So in the past, all the meetings that I've attended to date for the last 2 years have included findings of fact and conclusions in the memos that the planning staff have prepared. Yes, this is controversial, but I don't know why we could not have done that so that we had something we could tick through tonight on the off chance we happen to improve the application. So I'm disappointed that it's going to take 2 more weeks at least to come back with, written out findings of fact and conclusions that we can then finally approve if that's what we, are so inclined to do at that time.
Yeah, my apologies, Josh.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, normally I would agree. I like that kind of, this has been in process. And quite frankly, staff didn't know what we're gonna debate. Scott's argument was valid as well. This is a different view of the word compatibility and a vision. This one I'd give staff a pass on this one because they needed to let this play out, and then they have more direction to be able to go forward, as Larry suggested.
And I agree with your comment right there, Bruce.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table. Table. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye,
Who was that?
that was a late aye.
That was.
Okay. It's a unanimous motion.
Muted.
Okay. Thank you. And can I get a motion to
Motion to adjourn?
Excuse me.
adjourn?
Oh, whoops, we just, excuse me.
Yeah,
Yeah, excuse me, could-
Kevin Clark and applicants planning office will follow up with you.
Yes,
So-
can someone say, can we raise another issue?
Sounded like there was a motion to adjourn right now.
So we also,
Good.
We can certainly wait.
We have a motion on the table to adjourn. Want to hold that motion?
Yeah, hold that motion. What
Let's
was,
hear what Clark has to say.
Kevin, go ahead. I
Okay,
think.
okay,
ahead, go ahead.
we're trying to let Tim Bryan in, if you could, please.
Okay.
He's in.
Mr.
All
Bryant?
right, great. Go ahead, Tim.
Mr. Bryant, are you there?
There he goes.
I am there, Mr. Chairman. They just freed me up to speak. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Just a point of order. I guess I'd ask the board to consider amending their motion to table in the context of giving staff directions so that we don't, to be fair to the applicant, it has been 11 months and I appreciate why you all want to have something specific to vote on, but you can give the staff direction through a straw vote without being binding. So the next time we come back, it's not a public hearing on the same thing that we just went through tonight. You all have defined your views here and you got some specific questions. That's great. But you could give the staff direction. I think Rod, I don't know you, so I hope it's okay using your first name, indicated that, they would go draft a positive motion to accomplish the goal that you guys just set forth, while at the same time addressing in there some of the concerns you have to see if you would vote in that manner. And I guess on the applicant's behalf, I'd ask that you consider amending your motion to table to give them that directive. That's not a binding ruling on your part. It's just a straw vote to give the staff direction. So when we come back, we won't be faced with the exact same issue that we have now, recognizing that, you're not binding yourself by any vote whatsoever. It's simply to ask them to come back with a favorable or one of each. But I think here we've had a hearing, you guys have articulated your thoughts, and and if we want to exclude to address Mr. Van Note's concern about the traffic, that's fine. But he did say earlier, and I think all of you have said you had no opposition to the comprehensive plan compatibility issue. And I guess I'd ask at least that we do that tonight, if we could, Mr. Chairman and other members of the planning board, please.
Do we have agreement?
just,
Bruce?
I guess I'd ask Rod, are you wanting for direction, Rod?
I think I understand it, but if you want to follow what he's saying, I understand what he's saying, that we don't come back and have some discussion that's not related to what you're directing me to do. But if you want to do
not
that
me.
in the motion, that's fine.
It's not me personally, but what I think we all just witnessed, I mean, it's one of those things, take yes for an answer kind of thing. You don't keep hitting. The key issues was the drive-through and the consistency with the comprehensive plan and the compatibility with the neighborhood. I think we had a really good discussion, a discussion that staff was looking for. I think they understood. I think it was very well done. I mean, Scott laid out one side, I laid out the other, other people weighed in. I think plenty of guidance has been given on that area to go ahead and be positive on those issues in the motion. Not to say that Scott or anyone else couldn't vote against it because he disagrees. I think that's how this is supposed to work. But on the traffic, I just haven't done the homework yet. Staff is in a not so delicate way going, yellow flag, look at this. This is a big deal. And about money and offsite and who's paying and all that kind of stuff. it could actually, depending on what it's doing, I have to, I don't know what it would do about conflicting me out of stuff. I don't know. So I'm not ready to give staff any further direction than that for me personally. So that's where I am. And I think doing so might unnecessarily tie the hands. I mean, on the big issue that I saw from these memos, conditional use, compatibility and consistency, I think there's plenty of guidance.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to withdraw my request if Mr. Vino and the rest of you agree that staff's been given positive direction. More than that, I don't want to make anybody stay any later or try to steal yes as an answer. If you can't see my face, I'm smiling. I was simply trying to be helpful, but if Rod, and again, permit for using your first name, Rod, that if he feels like they have adequate direction from all of you, then I'm more than satisfied. It's a little challenging because I can't see his face or any, so I can't tell that. But if you guys feel satisfied and he does, then that's more than fine for being for the applicant.
Thank you.
The other aspect is that, I mean, we will get a potential draft motion, but it's also a motion that we can discuss and tweak as necessary. So that's how I look at where we will be at the next meeting, is at least get some stuff out, covers a lot of the bases that would be almost impossible for Bruce to cover at the present time, given a tiny screen and 2 inches away from it. So I'm looking for, there you go, something that we can actually work with and button down the way we wish.
Okay.
And I think there's a motion to adjourn on the table.
I would second that.
It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.